Hello, hello, and welcome to Hygiene Elevated Conversations and Innovations. Today we have the esteemed pleasure of being joined by Rachel Hicks, Mentor Rach on Instagram. Rachel, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. I can't wait to chat more about teeth whitening.
This is more whitening education than I had in school, just from the last episode to this one. So this is going to be fun. So Rachel, for people that did not get to hear our last podcast with you on it, I would love to hear about your story, what you do, how you practice, where you're at, all of those fun things before we start talking about whitening.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks so much again for letting me elaborate more on the topic. And as you mentioned, teeth whitening is just something that isn't discussed much in our industry. So it's incredible to actually have a platform to chat and educate on. So I'm Rachel, and I'm over here in Canada. I know a lot of your listeners are in the States, but if anyone has been over the border into Canada, that's where I am. I'm in Ontario, and I'm actually a trained dental assistant. So I have been in the dental world since 2014, and in 2021, I dove into teeth whitening. So I opened my own teeth whitening studio in my home, and then opened the first commercial teeth whitening studio. And teeth whitening has been my day in, day out ever since. So it's been lots of fun. I own my own B2C company. So we have studios all over, and we do different models with medi spas or even dental clinics where we provide teeth whitening for them, like their services for the day. And then on the flip side, I also own a B2B company where our team is a large supplier for dental clinics and dental hygienists to buy the best teeth whitening systems. So,
What do those terms mean? I'm going to interrupt you. B2C, B2D.
yeah,
What do those terms mean?
great question. So, our B2C is when we go direct to consumer. So, that would be like, Costco's a great example. It means like you, Amanda, you can walk through the store and you're the consumer. So, any of those brands that you find in Costco, you can buy direct. You don't need a license. It's not professional grade by any means, regardless of what you're buying. It just means that you can provide services as a business to the direct consumer. And then on the flip side, B2B is business to business. So then that's when you are only selling your products to businesses. So that usually comes with professional standings, licenses, etc. So when we talk about teeth whitening products specifically, our B2C model, we only sell our lower gel percentages and our actual teeth whitening services. So our hands-on services, our in-office chairside sessions. And then our B2B line, we sell our professional grade strengths that we use for those sessions to fellow dental professionals to use the same system.
Thank you for that education. So direct to consumer, direct to business, or business to business, business to consumer. So, okay. So I want to know a little bit more. Why did you specifically decide to hone in on the whitening aspect of dentistry, I guess?
Yeah, and we kind of touched on it last episode, and it really came down to when I was in dental sales. I was getting asked all the time, like I'd walk into an office and like a DA or an RDH would kind of like pull me into their office and kind of whisper in my ear, like, hey, can you get me teeth whitening supplies? I see all of these beauty professionals offering teeth whitening, and if they can do it, why can't I do it? And they would mention that their patients in the chair would be asking about teeth whitening options, and they wanted more than just custom trays. And the professionals like the DA or the RDH would sit there and be like, well, our office doesn't offer anything but custom trays, but why can't I offer that to you outside of the office? So they were asking me, and I was like, this is really interesting. So then I decided, well, let's actually dive in and see if consumers are actually looking for teeth whitening as much as these professionals are coming across that they are. And the truth is, they are. They really are.
Yes. Yes, they are. I think it's one of those frustrations as a hygienist. You get a new patient that comes in, they've got a lot going on, and you're elaborately explaining all of their treatment plan, oral systemic condition, and they're like, so can I get my teeth whitened? And you're like, yes, but not right now, but yes. And it's just like, did you hear anything I said? But I think that does come down to making sure that you know what your patient is after. Like, they're coming to you obviously for health, but there are times, that we should be the one driving the conversation of whitening, not Kim Kardashian or anybody else, right? Unfortunately, and I think this is a good opportunity, like you're saying, for dental offices to do some internal marketing, because what patient is in your chair that doesn't want whitening? 9
Exactly.
out of 10 do. But yeah, I mean, there's always that one that's like, I don't care. But 9 out of 10, yeah, they want something. They'll talk about it. They'll entertain the ideas.
And I love that you mentioned that because that's a great kind of note to touch on that studies do show like high marketing companies really push that consumers buy on emotion. And
Mm-hmm.
if they are unconfident or they're not feeling secure about their smile, that makes sense why all of those health things you just mentioned to them just goes over their head because they're thinking about an emotional trigger that they're unconfident about their smile or they're embarrassed by their smile. And they just think, ooh, whitening, that emotional trigger, that could get me a better feeling. That could get my confidence back. So, Amanda, I don't care about my oral health.
I
I
don't care
just,
that my bones are rotting out of my head. I just want them white. Sounds
right?
legit.
Too good, but it's true. It's really at the end of the day, it's crazy when you start digging into marketing, etc. We human creatures are so tied to emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do. We are emotional decision makers. I think especially in the realm of food, there's a whole lot of science there. But I remember a discussion that we had at a study club one time talking about not quite this very situation, but when you're in the process of explaining things to patients, if you say the word bad breath
Mm.
or like you tap into some sort of insecurity, does your acceptance rate go up? And I was like, okay, I had a problem with that at first because I was like, that's not okay. But I was like, at the same time, it's not wrong. It's not something that isn't a reality or something that patients think about. Because bad breath, right? We can talk about periodontal disease, oral systemic link all day long, and they're very important to overall health. But what does the patient understand? 9 times out of 10, they understand bad breath equals, being a social pariah. You're not, maybe your partner doesn't like to kiss you, or if you're in the dating scene and having bad breath, like your chances of landing a good date go down. So tapping into all of those things uh, can open up doors to help a patient realize that health is more than just my hygienist is cleaning my teeth. It's my hygienist is helping me have health, but that's giving me a better breath, basically. But yes, to your point, emotion is key.
Exactly. And this is really kind of what's happened is the dental office has kind of let go of what their patients have been asking for, like specifically around teeth whitening, not paying attention to fixing that emotional trigger. And that's why in 2025, we're seeing teeth whitening done in some great ways outside of the office by dental professionals with great whitening studios throughout North America. And then on the flip side, a lot of not great whitening situations being done throughout North America. And it has just really come down because our industry didn't really pay attention to it.
Yeah. It is an interesting phenomenon that patients would rather go to some sort of a pop-up studio to get whitening than to have a conversation with a dental professional about it. Why? I'm curious, why do you think that is? Instead of going to their trusted dental office, do you think it's economic driven or just a convenience thing? What is your take?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think definitely the first thing is economic, like we chatted about in office, 500, 700, even $1,000 some clinics are charging for chairside teeth whitening. So That's number one, just out of the realm for a lot of our patients financially. And then on the flip side, I think there still is, as much as we like to think that, the dental office doesn't have that as much stigma as it used to be about being scared or reserved, etc. I think deep down, a lot of our patients still really do struggle with feeling confident or asking those questions in a dental office, because there still is a lot of scarcity mindset and also just not feeling confident about oral health in general. And I think they're just afraid to have that barrier. And I mean, it could open a whole nother can of worms, as we were briefly chatting about before we started. I mean, we know we're in a really interesting time right now with jobs not being filled, offices short staffed. Like, there also isn't that connection a lot of patients are getting with the same provider every time they go in. So maybe they're just also not building that comfort rapport that they feel confident asking those questions as well.
So maybe there is some benefit to those signs that we do with internal marketing that say, ask me about whitening. So opening up the doors to conversation. So Rachel, I want to know, in your experience, what have been the most popular chairside whitening brands in dentistry? Because I was at Chicago Midwinter 2 months ago now, which is wild. And I got to walk the floor and I was like, what in the world are some of these whitening? I've never heard of these people. So what is your experience with that?
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's similar with you being in the States and us here in Canada. There is just kind of like a target few that are the most well known, and for better or for worse. So Zoom, definitely, I feel like if I say Zoom, you know exactly what I'm thinking of and talking about, right?
The
We're
the meeting space, the virtual meeting space, right?
Yeah, right? So, Zoom, Philip Zoom has really held the market for years and years and years. I feel like being a Zoom sales rep must be the best job ever, because you don't even have to pitch. You just walk in and you say, I'm your Zoom rep, and your office buys.
It's
So,
true.
Zoom's definitely a heavy hitter. They hold a market for a reason. I mean, they do give you some great results, but we know that sensitivity is really, really high with Zoom. So Zoom's a big one. And then the two that I would say would be close seconds that are, again, more generational, have been around for a while, is Pola as well.
That one.
Have you not heard of Pola? So
I don't think so.
yeah, so Pola is with they are with, I'm going to totally botch who they are with. I want to say they're with Ivoclar, but I might be wrong. They're a brand off of another big dental company. And then Opalescence. Are you familiar with Opalescence?
I live in Utah. It's the home of Ultradent. So I have Ultradent blankets adorning my operatory. So yes, I've
So
heard of them. I've heard of them.
so they're really big. And the difference between Zoom, Pola, and Opalescence is Zoom is still pushing LED, as Opalescence and Pola push that you don't need a light. But have you have you actually worked chairside with Opalescence before?
To be honest, I don't think I have. Just their post whitening products. I've done like the whitening strips and their gel, but not a chairside product,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So, really, at the end of the day, I mean, there's only so many ways you can perform teeth whitening, right? So, at the end of the day, all three are doing very similar steps. The difference is percentage and if they are or are not using a light source. And I know there's always a big debate on if light sources are needed or not, but really, at the end of the day, they are, if you want that instant gratification for your patient. And even if you read the really small writing on both Pola and Opalescence, they both say, if wanting accelerated results, pair with an LED light. So it does really come down to, those are the big three that are holding the industry. I like to think, I'm biased, but I like to think our company, Fern Whitening Supplies, is really moving into the market and kind of taking the issues that clinics are struggling with right now with the more common brands, taking those issues away. But right now, those are the three that you probably notice and that a lot of your listeners have probably actually worked with before.
I will not name the brand that we work with. I work for a DSO, so I will leave it at that. We don't get Ultradent, we don't get Zoom or Pola. And I'll be honest, I've been so underwhelmed by the outcomes that I've seen with the product that we're using. And I've brought it up with management. I'm like, I wouldn't pay money for this. I mean, yes, $300 is what we charge, which is very affordable. Plus, you get the take-home trays. But to me, I'm like, the juice is not worth the squeeze here. Like, if I saw my teeth before and after, I'd be like, they look a little brighter, I guess. But as a clinician, I'm just like a little bit. I will not push something that I don't see or I don't buy into. And I mean, if a patient is like, I want to try it, I'm like, you can absolutely try it. But yes, if you're gonna do the whitening and you're gonna get the take home trays, yes, absolutely, let's do it. I'll support them in that journey, but I try to set expectation low with the product we use. I'm not happy with it.
Do you know off the top of your head what the percentage is?
I don't. I don't know.
Is it a
Probably
light
because it's
source?
been that long since we've done it. Uh, the because of what they say no light source. So we're
Okay.
not using a light source.
Yeah, so that's a great example, and exactly why you're getting the results that you're getting is because you're not dehydrating the tooth properly. And to be honest, we don't want to over dehydrate and just create false whites. But if we think back to anything we do in dentistry, so let's say a filling or specifically like bonding brackets, for example, like I should say anything in dentistry that we're trying to get retention or absorption in, we etch before, right? So same thing with tooth whitening. We need to dehydrate the tooth structure to actually get absorption into the dentin tubules. And we can't do that with just peroxides alone. We need to add a light source so that we actually get our tooth dehydrated to actually absorb through. Because right now, if you're just laying down peroxides, and I'm assuming you're probably at a little bit of a lower peroxide too, like you said, you're just not getting a full stain removal. You're probably getting extrinsic stain removed, but you're probably not doing the greatest job at starting that intrinsic stain removal. And that's where a lot of our stain consumption lies.
Truth. So what you talked at our last podcast, the difference between peroxide and carbamide peroxide. So tell us again, for those who did not listen, what is the difference between those two products?
Yeah, so as we kind of talked about, like the big three companies that we're usually the most familiar with, like Zoom, Opalescence, and Pola, they're all hydrogen-based peroxides. And just so you know, you can find all of this stuff online. I promise I'm not giving away any trade secrets. You can just Google them. So they're all straight hydrogens, and they're ranging from 25% hydrogen up to 37 to 40% hydrogen. And of course, each breakdown is going to have different chemicals and also ingredients that brand sees as different reasons to get you better results. Usually the most difference is different factors to put in for sensitivity, like if there's fluoride, etc., added into the gels. But then those are the most common that you see chairside just due to lack of education. So what a lot of professionals don't realize is that our other friend in the peroxide world, carbamide peroxide, is a great option. And usually most dental clinics only use it as take-home gels because it is a slower releasing peroxide. But if our goal in a chairside session is to remove extrinsic stain and remove intrinsic stain, we want lasting peroxide that's going to oxidize and really break down those stain pigments. And carbamide takes a full 6+ hours to break down, as a hydrogen's only 3 hours roughly, meaning that our carbamides we want to absorb intrinsically and let it break down so you continue to brighten over 24 hours by the time everything's done. So what that comes down to is, as I mentioned, kind of those hydrogen numbers, really common chairside, are 25 to 40%. Carbamide numbers sound really strong. So let's say a dental clinic is actually working with a carbamide chairside and it's going to say probably 44% CP carbamide.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds so strong. You're like, holy smokes. But really, CP is a form of hydrogen and it's 3 times less as strong, meaning anytime you see a CP number, you divide it by 3. So really a 44% carbamide is just under a 15% hydrogen. So that means that if you are working with a chairside product, would be interesting, Amanda, if you kind of look around later and actually look at the percentage. Maybe you are working with a carbamide and it's just really not that strong and it's not getting you that quick absorption, and some clinics just don't realize that. It might say 44% CP and the clinic thinks, holy smokes, we're ready to rock, when really they're working with a beauty grade gel. So that's something to look about. And anyone listening should be like, oh, is my syringes that I'm using chairside, is it HP or is it CP? And kind of think about what results and expectations they're giving their patients, and then how that product will actually react in the short time frame you have chairside.
That is a very interesting little tidbit. I don't think we discussed that last time. If we did, I completely forgot, unfortunately, but I don't think we did. I know we talked about the differences between the two products, but the percentages, I definitely don't remember that one. So that might be a lot of information for our listeners to take in right now. So is there something that you do differently, knowing that you're using that type of a product, chairside, using beauty grade? So is there, now I just opened up a whole lot of questions in my head. Is there like 66% carbamide?
So typically 44% carbamides is high is what's on the market, just because there's only so high you can push either hydrogen or a carbamide before it just comes way too unstable, and it would be really hard to hold in an active state in a vessel, like in a syringe or a pen. So usually we've got 44% carbamide is the strongest for carbamide, and then usually it's only 38% for hydrogen, but Opalescence claims theirs is a 40%.
I would say, I think
right?
I've seen 45%.
But if you read some of the docs on some of those companies that claim that they're pushing 40 to 45, they claim that their solutions are really high in aqua, so that it's not actually a full 40 or 45%, that it's really, really highly concentrated with water, so that that percentage isn't the pure form. So it's hard to say what the strongest hydrogen is, but if we think about it, we know hydrogen releases the fastest and causes the most sensitivity. So I personally would think 25%, which is the Zoom standard, is more than enough, but there are definitely lots of companies that are pushing more. But I have a feeling what you're thinking in the back of your mind is, you mentioned beauty. What do you mean? Like, what's the difference?
I feel called out.
So typically, kind of, especially in the States, if you are offering teeth whitening outside of a dental office, insurance companies will only cover up to 25% for cosmetic insurance. So rule of thumb is anything between 16% hydrogen and about 20% hydrogen you can lay down without a gum barrier. So that's typically what we call a beauty standard gel, because that's what a lot of beauty providers are doing. They're not laying down gingival barrier, or they're doing the self-administered technique where they can't touch the client. The client is literally applying everything.
Right? I'm just like applying that to my esthetician. If she walked in and I'm like, I am here to wax my arm, and she's like, yeah, well, let me show you how to put it on. I'm like, well, what am I paying you for? Like, no thanks.
Right. And I think that's a perfect example to show how bad the dental industry has done with whitening, because I know clinics that are doing self-admin and they are so busy. So if our patients have gotten to that point where they want whitening so bad, they're willing to go and pay and do it themselves, what are we doing?
I'm a little bit speechless right now. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, only in the States, because there's a few states that really push that you can't touch the client or that's practicing dentistry. So they do administered methods so that they get around that dental law in their state. But yeah, it's a thing. So that means anytime you're working with pretty much any sort of carbamide chair side, you are working with a beauty gel, because if that 44% is the strongest and that's only about 15% hydrogen, you're well under that limit of no gingival barrier. So we have, for beauty grade gels, anything under 25% legally for your cosmetic insurance, but usually they're floating with the 16 to 20%. And then anything over 25% is what you're going to get in the dental clinics, because your cosmetic insurance companies won't cover that, because of course there's higher risks with higher peroxides.
So, and that's not like the divided by 3 number. That's just the what's on there.
Yep, that's your straight hydrogens.
Interesting. Okay. That's a lot to process. That's a lot to unpack. I'm still baffled at the self-administer. The way people get around things really cracks me up sometimes. But I mean, clever or good on them. So with this knowledge that we now have, Rachel, I'm a little bit curious. So if you're allowed to talk about this, what is the procedure that you implement with your whitening products in office?
Yeah, so this has really been through years of trial. Like, again, I've been doing this, figuring out my own method since 2019. And along the way, it's been building out formulations and also working with great dental manufacturers. So our clinic, how we do all of our chairside whitening sessions here in Canada, and also what we sell to dental clinics, is we have a proprietary gel that's actually a blend. So we kind of talked about the benefits of hydrogen and carbamide, right? Our quicker release and our longer release. So why wouldn't we use it together? So we actually have blended gels. So they're called active HPs, meaning that there's carbamide and hydrogen in the gel and together. So then when they both oxidize out, it's one solid HP number. That's the active HP amount, but you're still getting the benefits of the slower releasing carbamide. So we use blended gels at 25%. That percentage, I feel like there's just something to kind of note. Like, if there's a dinosaur like Zoom around and they use 25% hydrogen and it's been rocking the dental world for years and years and years, there's clearly some science behind it, right? If it does so well, there's got to be something about that 25%. And it is true. There's lots of clinical trial studies. The Wilkins textbook even has a great paragraph about it, that anything over 30% hydrogen has studies showing that you can get microscopic voids through your enamel, and it can cause, which is really common, false whites. And there still is some concern on those stronger peroxides, what the long-term breakdown would be. So anything over 30% is kind of flagged as like the only thing you're really doing post that is extra dehydration. Are you actually providing a stain removal, or are you just making the tooth really thirsty? So we personally have chose to stay at that 25%. It's been great. And then what we've done is we've paired up with Beyond International. They're a manufacturer actually in Texas, and they have over 14 dental advisory awards on their patent ultrasonic accelerator technology for whitening lights. So they have what's called the Beyond 2 Ultra, which is what we work with in our clinics, and we also distribute. We're one of the biggest distributors in North America for them. And what this light does is it fixes a ton of problems. We would be on here for hours if we went through all of them, but a quick little breakdown is it works with what we call the ultrasound technology. So kind of think of like your ultrasonic and your stereo bay. It's going to break down your gels and oxidize them a lot faster with that actual cavitation motion, which is going to allow you to really shorten your chair times. So for example, if we compare, let's say the standard Zoom, you're under the light for 4 15-minute rounds. When you go to something like the Ultra Accelerator machine, you're increasing your intensity with lux energy instead of our MC2 squared energy, which is heat energy. And that allows you to oxidize out your gels a lot faster. So our chair times are only 2 rounds of 12 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And we get the exact same chairside results as you would off of a longer session with heat based lights, and also say if you're pushing higher peroxides. So it has been really great to switch into working with your stronger gels. I shouldn't say stronger gels, but a different chemistry of gels. So how it looks in our office is typically what a lot of clinics struggle with is they work with some great brands. They get their patients really white chairside that's either high peroxides or long contact times under their heat-based lights. And their patients chairside are so happy, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I'm Ross from Friends. Look at this glow, right? So then what happens when they remineralize in about 24 to 48 hours, they really rebound because their false white disappears because really they were more dehydrated more than anything. So they sometimes will call back and be like, I need more whitening or what's going on because I've lost that brightness. As our system moving from non-heat activated lights, but still oxidizing our gels faster, we still absolutely remove extrinsic stain and start the intrinsic process. So you definitely notice brightness for sure. But instead of rebounding in 24 to 48 hours, they're only brighter in about 24 to 48 hours because that carbamide's working in the back end. And think of our tooth structure. There's different parts of our tooth that are thicker and thinner, right? Like our gingival margins are definitely thicker. It's going to take longer to absorb through. So yeah, you might notice a little bit of yellow tones still around areas like your gingival margins when you first leave the studio. But by that 24 to 48 hours, when it's fully absorbed in without ever have been extra dehydrated, we have great results and the best retention, and patients love it because there's no sensitivity.
This is like a clinical implication question. Sometimes I think patients will come in and they'll say, like, my canines are so much more yellow than the rest of my tooth. And obviously, there's a little bit of anatomy involved there. How do you address that type of an issue?
Yeah, so good. And you're so true. A lot of the times cuspids are darker, or a lot of the times the lower anteriors are darker than the max anteriors too. So what we do is say if they are starting with darker cuspids or the mandibulars darker than the maxillary, then we will give them some sort of dual tray to go home with, and they will just spot whiten at home and to continue to catch up to the brightness that they've got. So they would just pop the gel on, say the cuspids. Either we send them home with just a retractor to keep their lips out of the way, or like I mentioned, a dual tray if we're trying to do like a full arch, like the lower arch. But yeah, that's it, because really over the next 2 weeks, your dentin tubules are going to be slightly open still because they have been dehydrated to a sense under the light. So the best way to continue to pick up that stain absorption is going to be to add peroxides over those 2 weeks while they're at home. So if they need to target whiten, that's what they're doing at home to catch up any darker spots.
So interesting. It's never have I done such a deep dive on whitening, Rachel, ever. Okay. So for the hygienist out there, especially as you had kind of mentioned, there's a lot of things happening within the scope of practice for hygienists right now. So what if a hygienist was really interested in setting up a whitening practice? What would that look like? Obviously, all 50 states are different, so you can't possibly know the laws for each. But what are some general guidelines? Unless you do know the laws for all 50.
Yeah,
Correct
so
me.
it pretty much comes down to depending on the dentistry board for your state. So it comes down to obviously you're impinging on a service that the dental clinic offers. So some dentistry boards are really aggressive about it and other ones do not care. So for example, I would look up the whiteout article. You can just find it on Google, the whiteout article, and put teeth whitening and it should come up. It's from 2013, but it's a really interesting article. It lists the majority of all states, and what this legislative attorney has done is she literally went to every state board through their law through their laws and their policies to see if there actually was legalities written in their state laws or their state policies that teeth whitening can or cannot be performed out of a dental office. So there's a great chart that just says, yes, it's legal, unsure, or no, it's totally legal. Now, just keep in mind when you look through it, this is from 2013.
Yeah, I was like, that's a long time ago legislatively.
So, but it's a great example of like, it's not hard to figure out if you can just contact your state board and say, hey, is this legal? Is this not? But another piece of info that I always mention is like, if this was actually illegal, you would see proceedings about it in your state every single day. And I bet if you look up any actual legal lawsuits, you cannot find any for your state specifically regarding teeth whitening. So what I would do is kind of check out your state, see if there are any laws around it, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. But from there, you can chat with your dental board if you want. But what you're going to find is that Texas is a great example. Texas has a ton, and I mean a ton, of teeth whitening studios that are either run by beauty professionals or by dental professionals. The beauty professionals have no issues whatsoever, but the dental professionals, there are some cases of dental professionals having to give up their hygiene license to keep their teeth whitening studio going. So
I have heard of that, and that is the most insane thing. Texas.
It's crazy that they do not care if a beauty professional with no background is doing teeth whitening, but they care if that RDH is doing teeth whitening. So
clutch my pearls. But the fact that a hygienist would have to make that decision, that's disgusting. Like,
crazy.
How, I don't understand the rationale there at all.
Yeah, it's wild. So pretty much you have to kind of be your own researcher, check your state, also figure out, kind of as we were chatting too, like if you're in a state where you can be a self-initiated independent hygienist, then obviously you're very clear to just do teeth whitening as well. If they're allowing you to do your own clinic, they're not going to come after you for doing teeth whitening. But majority of the states, what it falls into is just keeping your business license separate from your actual RDH, RDA license, and you're running it as a personal care service. You get your own cosmetic teeth whitening insurance. You get your own public health audits from a personal care aspect, really easy to do. And then you just follow your product implications for cosmetics. And then majority of clinics have no issues whatsoever, and they do really well.
It is interesting looking at the legality of things. As you were talking, my mind was triggered to a Facebook conversation that I got to, click in on yesterday, actually between my esthetician. So I live in Utah, and we have the, local 411 chat group for our Facebook page. And everybody in my town is on this page, and we all know each other's business. It's a small city. But we're growing. I digress. Somebody posted that they are now doing eyelash extensions for like an absurdly low amount of money. I think it was like $50. And so obviously people are like, show me your work, like how much, I'm interested. And I see my esthetician chime in because her daughter does eyelash extensions, and my esthetician is a master esthetician. So she takes her license very seriously. And so she chimed in and she was like, are you licensed? And this lady chimed back, I'm not licensed. You don't have to be licensed in Utah anymore. And they went back and forth, and it was very respectable, but there was a lot of chat GPT with Instagram posts and all of these things saying, I don't have to be licensed. You just have to take this course to be certified. Which I haven't checked on it today to see what the results were from my esthetician responding to the latest before I went to bed last night. But to that point, it's interesting how each state can be so different, and you can't be a hygienist, but you can be a beauty service provider to provide this service. But you could have your hygiene license taken away if you dare whiten outside. It just like the standards make no sense. Or at least I would love to hear the rationale and the arguments behind why the decisions were made the way they were.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? And I think really at the end of the day, it just comes down to some of these dentistry boards just feel like the hygienist outside of the office would be, undercutting them and taking their whitening clients, which they're not paying attention to anyway. And they're like, no, you can't do that. You work for, our governing board. You can't, you know, get some money off of the side. So it's
So
definitely
we'll let the
crazy.
beauty industry do it. Yes. Yes. Okay. So again, kind of going back to a hygienist thinking like, what about this? How can you go about ordering? Because that's kind of one of the issues. And even with the whole Botox thing that we can now do in Utah, you have to be able to order the product that you can now provide the service to your client, your patient. How does that work?
Yeah, so if you're a hygienist, you're probably able to purchase through the quote unquote standard lines that you're typically used to purchasing through at your dental clinics, right? Probably the big distributors that you're comfortable with and know of. And then they carry those bigger lines that we talked about for whitening. But what you're going to find is that if you're going to open your own teeth whitening business, you cannot be working with those dental clinic brands. You absolutely cannot, because their cost per person is way too high for you to then turn around, try to price a decent service and still make a profit margin on. So you do have to source outside of the realm of dental. That doesn't mean you're cutting in quality. For example, like Fern, we really allow our prices to be flexible for dental clinics and independent clinics, purposely for independent clinics to grow. But you can look for some great options that are going to get your cost per person in American dollars from about 25 to $40 per person. And compared to a dental clinic in USD dollars, you're probably paying anywhere from about $80 to $120 per person. So you can see that that's a big flux in capital that you're able to work with, right? So you're going to need to source more affordable products. Again, as long as you're doing it correctly, it doesn't mean that you're cutting in quality. And then you're going to be able to actually price in this economy, right? So in 2025, the most standard pricing outside of a dental clinic, if it's done by a hygienist or a dental assistant, is going to be anywhere between 220 to all the way up to about, I'd say, 350. And that 350 mark would definitely be larger cities, or you're including something like take-home trays as an addition. So I would say 225, 220, all the way up to about 299 is probably the most average. And if you're working with advanced technologies like the Ultra Machine, you can whiten two people at once. So you can make double the revenue in one chairside session, as well as you're only holding up about 45 minutes of chair time. So you're able to see lots of clients, do lots of fun, like bridal parties. I know some different providers who will do, like, especially around the holiday season, where they'll go to like real estate firms, insurance agencies, etc., and they do like mobile pop-ups, like the company pays you to come in and whiten their staff. Like, there are so many fun things that you can do safe, effectively, and profitably, like putting your hard-earned skills to work for yourself.
No, that's definitely thinking outside of the box and kind of fun ways to do that. So okay, going back and thinking about hygienists possibly starting their own whitening business, what is the number one tip that you would have for that hygienist?
Yes, love this. Number one thing is do a budget. Figure out what you can financially afford. That's number one, right? Because you don't want to just buy something here, buy something there, then you have all of it and you're like, well, what do I do? Yes, people want their teeth whitened. Teeth whitening is growing, and the client base that you can get is incredible, right? It's very diverse. But people need to know that you offer the service. So my number one tip is deep dive into YouTube, chat with local experts, etc. Figure out a marketing plan. People need to know that you offer the service, because if they don't know, you're not going to get bookings. So not only build a budget for what you can afford for products and your space of whatever version you plan on doing, if that's an in-person space or a mobile space, but budget for advertising. That is my number one piece of advice for sure.
What do you think the best not network, the best place to advertise is? Social, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
So I would say it really depends on your local geographic area. Like if you're in a town where it's, more university based, college based, seems to be more younger professionals, then I would say, yeah, social media, probably more TikTok. But then if you're in an area where it's more mature professionals and you're like, nope, they're hanging out more on Instagram and Facebook, it really does depend
Well,
on.
thank you. I am a more mature.
Too good. They definitely, you need to figure out your local area for sure. And then, yeah, probably social in some way, shape, or form. But there's lots of great resources on YouTube, or even just purchasing some courses that can be quite cheap too, of just figuring out actually how to run social media properly. I'm sure, Amanda, you have great insight here. It's hard. It's hard to do. So you have to make sure that you understand how much work marketing is.
Yes. Yes. Side note, like branding. I think we could probably talk a whole lot about branding. I did a branding photo shoot
Amazing.
a month ago. One of the best amounts of money I've ever spent, just with the amount of content that I have, how I want to use it, all sorts of things. But investments like that in your business, it'll make you look a little bit more professional and just branded as a whole.
Absolutely. So true. And, in this landscape again of 2025, you do have to output a lot more than probably a company back in 2000, right? Branding was definitely a little different back then, but now you have to be branded on so many different platforms in so many
Mhm.
different ways. I mean, starting any business is a risk and an investment, but if, you do it properly, then it can definitely pay off.
No, totally agree. Okay, Rachel. So much information. You are a wealth of whitening knowledge. I will give you kind of the floor for like a closing statement. Any last pieces of advice that you would like to give our listeners?
Yeah, last piece of advice, if you are in clinic in operatory and you're rocking it and you love it and that's where you see your dental career continuing, kudos to you. That's incredible. And when it comes to the whitening landscape, just think at the end of the day, there's only so many ways you can put gel on a tooth. Just make sure that you're doing it safe, effectively, not blanching the gums, and that you are providing a proper light source so you can get the best and quickest results. Ideally not heat based, so we don't cause pulpal inflammation. And then if you are ready to jump out of the operatory and you're looking for ways to explore what you could do with those, again, those hard-earned skills that you've invested your time and your money on building, then maybe teeth whitening is for you. And again, jump in, look at your local guidelines. If you need some kind of help on where to source those, send me a DM. Always love to help. But the sky's the limit, regardless of which way you want to take your RDH career. And thanks so much again for allowing me to come on the show and chatting about it.
Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so at Mentor Rach on all platforms is probably the easiest.
Awesome. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on again and sharing just the wealth of knowledge that you have from whitening. Genuinely something that we're aware of, but we don't do deep dives on. So thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks so much, Amanda.